San Francisco lawmakers voted to ban police robots from using deadly force on Tuesday, reversing course 1 week after officials had approved the practice and sparked national outrage. The city's Board of Supervisors voted to explicitly prohibit the San Francisco Police Department from using the 17 robots in its arsenal to kill people. The board, however, also sent the issue back to a committee for further review, which means it could later decide to allow lethal force in some circumstances. The U-turn came after the majority of members on the 11-person board had voted last week to allow robots to be armed with explosives and use them to kill people when risk of loss of life to members of the public or officers is imminent and outweighs any other force option available to SFPD. The board had also added an amendment saying that only high-ranking officers would be allowed to authorize deadly force. The initial decision to allow killer robots was met with widespread criticism from civil rights groups and shone a harsh light on the increasing militarization of U.S. police forces. Supervisors and police officials who had originally supported the use of lethal force had said the robots would kill people only in extraordinary cases, such as suicide bombing or active shooter situations. Hillary Ronan, one of 3 supervisors who originally voted against deploying killer robots, said at last week's meeting, "I'm surprised that we're here in 2022. We have seen a history of these leading to tragedy and destruction all over the world." After Tuesday's reversal, she tweeted, "I'm surprised that we're here in 2022. We have seen a history of these leading to tragedy and destruction all over the world." After Tuesday's reversal, she tweeted, "Common sense prevailed." The new policy does allow SFPD to use robots for situational awareness, such as sending the equipment into dangerous situations while officers stay behind. On Monday, Supervisor Gordon Mark tweeted that he regretted voting in favor of lethal robots and said he'd be switching his position, even with additional guardrails. "I've grown increasingly uncomfortable with our vote and the precedent it sets for other cities without as strong a commitment to police accountability. I do not think making state violence more remote, distanced, and less human is a step forward. I do not think robots with lethal force will make us safer, or prevent or solve crimes," he added. San Francisco police have a controversial history of using lethal force against civilians, and one former officer is now facing manslaughter charges for an on-duty killing. The SFPD did not immediately respond to a request for comment.
Taiwan Foreign Minister: China may scapegoat us over COVID protests. Taiwan's foreign minister has backed China's anti-COVID protesters but also expressed concerns that Beijing could seek to scapegoat Taiwan if demonstrations restarted. Joseph Wu said Taiwan stood alongside other democracies in calling for China to respect basic human rights regarding the extraordinary protests that spread across China last week and the swift police response to close in on those involved. When the people's livelihood is restricted or people's lives are made inconvenient because of the government policies, I think it is the right for the people to stand up and say that they demand some basic rights, Wu told The Guardian in an exclusive interview. Freedom of expression, freedom of speech, is a basic right, and we certainly hope the Chinese government will observe that kind of basic right. However, Wu said Taiwan had paid close attention to the rallies to see how they would evolve and expressed an additional concern that they could restart. "We are always concerned that the Chinese government might try to create an external crisis to divert domestic attention," said Wu. "We are concerned that the Chinese government will aim at Taiwan, will accuse Taiwan of being the cause for the unrest in China. The government seems to be willing to moderate some of its measures," said Wu. "So in the future, these might cause more demonstrations among the Chinese people because they think that when there are major grievances, this is probably a very effective way of changing the government policy." One communication from a residential building manager in Guangzhou, seen by The Guardian, blamed the unrest of American and Taiwanese trolls, and there were sporadic mentions on social media, suggesting some acceptance of the claim. Communist Party disinformation campaigns and cognitive warfare are a major element of Beijing's attempts to destabilize Taiwanese government and society, and are of increasing concern to the island's government. There is no evidence the protests have been incited by foreign forces. The accusation was ridiculed by protesters attending at least one rally, with a widely shared clip showing a man questioning how they could be communicating with foreign forces when they could not connect to foreign internet services. China's government appears to have largely shut down the protests, the most significant acts of protest there since the Tiananmen rallies in 1989, which were brutally crushed by the military. Authorities have offered a carrot-and-stick response of eased restrictions for the broader population alongside a police crackdown on protesters and citizens with illegal VPNs and messaging apps. Major cities have lifted restrictions, reduced testing requirements, and the government has shifted its official messaging to emphasize the lower severity of Omicron. However, there are concerns about the large outbreak of COVID-19 that could be yet to come, if China's trajectory follows that of other countries that abandoned zero COVID. Taiwan also operated what was essentially a zero COVID response for most of the pandemic. It did not impose lockdowns, but maintained closed borders and strict quarantine requirements for positive cases and their contacts, with the aim of eliminating outbreaks. Its success kept death rates low, but also meant there was very little natural immunity when a tsunami of the highly transmissible Omicron variant hit. Like China's now, Taiwan's elderly population was also vastly undervaccinated, and many died when the virus spread. Asked what advice Taiwan could offer China, Wu said going through the first wave was not easy. He noted China's poor vaccination rates and the lower effectiveness of China's domestically produced vaccines. Under these kinds of circumstances, the Chinese government, in my opinion, is caught in a dilemma, he said, but advised China against returning to lockdowns. On the one hand, they understand that the lockdowns will cause their economic slowdown and inconveniences of the people, and may cause resentment of the regular Chinese people. But on the other hand, if they open up without proper vaccines to fight regular people, they are going to be caught in a major disease crisis.
iPhone chipmaker TSMC invests $40 billion in Arizona plants. Computer chip giant TSMC says it will more than triple its investment in a giant U.S. plant to $40 billion. It is one of the largest foreign investments in American history. The announcement came as President Joe Biden and the Taiwan-based firm's boss opened the factory in Arizona. The Biden administration is pushing ahead with plans to bring onshore production of key components in everything from phones to military jets. TSMC is the world's largest maker of microchips for other companies, with clients including Apple. Its Arizona plants will produce 3 nanometers and 4 nanometers chips used for iPhone processors. Semiconductors are sometimes referred to as the brains of electronics like smartphones, car components, and AI technology. Mark Liu, TSMC's chairman, said the firm would build 2 semiconductor fabrication plants, with the first one expected to be online by 2024. The overall investment will be approximately $40 billion. It is the largest investment the company has made outside of Taiwan. The investment is a boost for Mr. Biden following supply chain disruption that has led to chip shortages and amid growing tensions between the US and China. The original deal for TSMC to build a plant in the US came in 2020 when President Donald Trump was in office. The latest announcement vastly increases the size of that investment. Today, we're down to producing only around 10% of the world's chips, despite leading the world in research and design in new chip technologies, said Mr. Biden during a speech in Phoenix on Tuesday. The US once made more than 30% of the world's computer chips before the jobs moved overseas, he said. The United States is better positioned than any other nation to lead the world economy in the years ahead if we keep our focus, he added. The opening ceremony was attended by several heads of technology companies that rely on TSMC production, such as NVIDIA and Advanced Micro Devices. Apple's chief executive Tim Cook said it was a significant moment. We look forward to expanding this work in the years to come as TSMC forms new and deeper roots in America, he said. Analysts see TSMC's investment as a potential game changer in the industry. The TSMC investment is a significant step for U.S. chip investment over the next decade, according to Wedbush analyst Dan Ives. This kicks off a legitimate battle between the US and China on chip production, with this being a monumental strategic move by TSMC. In August, President Biden signed a law committing $280 billion to high-tech manufacturing and scientific research amid fears that the US was losing its technological edge to China. The investments include tax breaks for companies that build computer chip manufacturing plants in the US. The move came at a time when relations between the two countries have soured. This has been fueled by Beijing's claims over self-ruled Taiwan and its increasing assertiveness in Asia. Beijing sees Taiwan as a part of its territory that must be unified with the mainland, by force if necessary. Taiwan sees itself as distinct from the mainland. The US has responded by restricting access to advanced computer chip technology. That has hit China's export-driven economy, which uses the technology to make and sell everything from phones to electric cars.